Why, hello there. That sounded so stupid. How are you? Oh, God. Why, hello. That's just creepy. What's up? Peace, y'all. Hey. Hi. Hello. Booyah! Sup? Yo! Alright, you know what? Scratch the catchy opening. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the very first episode of the Asia Project vlog. My name is Asia Samson, and I am so glad that you are here and watching. I have been wanting to do a vlog for quite some time now. It's always been one of those projects that I've wanted to take on, but with schedules and touring and everything like that, I always ended up having to put it on the back burner. But now that we're in this situation where everyone is sheltering in place and we're basically at home, then what better time than to go ahead and get into those projects that I've been dying to do, and at the same time hoping to maybe hone my skills, and in return maybe I can help you hone yours. We are living in such crazy times right now, you guys. With everything from the global pandemic to economic shutdown to racial tensions to Saharan dust to killer hornets, if that's still even a thing, to meth gators, which is a thing. You should check it out. It's insane the kind of things we're having to deal with in the world right now. I wake up every single day wondering what is this world that I'm waking up in, because everything just seems so surreal. And I think that is the biggest problem we are all facing. The uncertainty of what this world is becoming, the fear that that uncertainty causes, and the anxiety of having to live in that fear every single day. I've been doing spoken word poetry since 2002. Now, I've been writing regular poetry for my entire life, for as far back as I can remember. I think the very first poem I wrote, I was 7 years old. But I didn't get into spoken word until about 18 years ago. And since then, I've somehow managed to make it into a career. I've toured over 1,000 colleges. I've been featured on HBO Deaf Poetry, NPR's Tiny Desk Contest, Button Poetry, So Far Sounds. I've worked with companies like Disney, Nokia, To Write Love on Our Arms. I've done a lot of stuff. But all of that I had to learn as I went along. Like, I just had to pick those things up as my career evolved. Because back in 2002, we really didn't have that many resources when it came to spoken word. Yeah, we had our local open mics, which is great for you to write poems and try it out in front of strangers and your peers. And we also had HBO Deaf Poetry on TV, which I think is what made a lot of people get involved in spoken word to begin with. And then there was also YouTube, but back then YouTube didn't really have that many videos the way they do today. Like today, if you wanted to watch a spoken word performance every half hour for the rest of your life, I can guarantee you still will not have gone through all of them by the time you die. There's just a lot of stuff. Button Poetry, right about now, All Deaf Poetry. There are channels out there dedicated to just bringing you spoken word performances. But correct me if I'm wrong, but one thing I feel like we've been missing in this market are videos that actually teach you how to do those things, which is why I wanted to do this vlog. I wanted to dedicate a portion of my channel to just basically summing up all the things that I've learned in the last 18 years. So if you're a new poet that's looking to learn how to just write a spoken word poem, or if you're a seasoned poet who just wants to refine your skills, or if you're somebody that was hoping to try to turn this poetry thing into a career, I wanted to kind of just amass all of the stuff that I've picked up along the way and hopefully provide some sort of resource for poets out there. So how long have I been talking now? 3 minutes and 10 seconds, and we still haven't even gotten to the intro? Well, let's get to it then. So before we even talk about writing poems, before we even get into process and themes and story structure, I think that it's really important for me to dedicate this very first episode to my personal core fundamental. And to me, nothing is more fundamental than having a code to live by. These are the 3 commandments that I've kind of come up with that I always keep in mind before I write anything. So here they are. Number 1. So, quick story. It's 2001. I'm watching HBO Deaf Poetry, and this Asian poet by the name of Bosia comes on. And he does this poem about Asian identity, and the whole crowd was just eating it up. They were laughing, they were going crazy, and I just remember gravitating to that poem so much because here was my race being represented in this art form. Like, how could I not feel somewhat moved by that, right? And I remember that night I went and wrote my very first Asian identity poem, which I think was only my third overall spoken word poem that I'd ever written. And it sounded so much like him. Like, it is uncanny. And I look back on it now, I'm like, why did you even write that? But I would tour it at these open mics, and when I would go to these open mics, I was really like the only Asian guy there. So of course everybody would go crazy for it. They would laugh and they would, just love it and they would eat it up. But as time went on, I actually started hating doing that poem. It just didn't feel like it was me. Not to mention, I wasn't somebody who was well versed in Asian studies. And I knew that, yeah, people are eating it up right now, but if I walk into some Asian organization and try to do this poem, there's probably going to be Asians out there who are well versed in activism and Asian studies who might call me out on some stuff and I won't even know what I'm talking about. I'm going to end up looking like the idiot because I was writing about something that I really wasn't well versed in. It wasn't until 2006 when I was diagnosed with cancer that I really started to write work that was meaningful to me. Finally, my voice emerged, my stories, poems that were representative of me. So when I say write what you know, I say that because as poets, it's so easy to kind of fall into the trap of writing something that's just trendy right now, right? Like we see something that's getting applause, or we're seeing, what it is that's getting 1 million views on YouTube, and we're like, oh, I'm going to write a poem like that and get that kind of reaction, even if you know that it's not really representative of you. I mean, if I wanted to, as a writer, I could right now write a poem about sexual abuse or gun violence or police brutality, but what do I know of those things? I've not had to deal with those type of things, and if I write a poem like that, just because that's what's trending right now, I'm not going to look genuine. People can spot fakeness right away, and there is always somebody who's gonna know more than you do and will call you out on it quick. And then what are you gonna do? Like personally, I would rather write stories that I've lived through. Sometimes I don't even consider myself a spoken word poet, more so that I consider myself a spoken word storyteller. Like, I love stories. I love not having to flex what I know about a specific topic and just tell the story for what it is. Tell the story of how it happened or what I went through, and let the audience come up with their own conclusions as to where I stand on that topic. That creates a lot more discussion, and for me, it hits a lot harder. Because if you think about it, true stories are not debatable. If I write about something that I'm not well versed in, something that's out of my league, then someone is going to debate me and I'm going to come up looking like an idiot. But if I just tell you a story of something that actually happened to me, what are they going to do? Tell me I'm wrong? Tell me it didn't happen? They can't, because all I'm doing is telling you a story and making you draw up your own conclusions. So when you write what you know, it suddenly becomes genuine. It suddenly becomes work that is of you and comes from you, and it's like not up for debate. Here's the sad truth. There is no such thing as a new idea. That topic you're thinking about writing about, love, heartbreak, joy, pain, it's already been written before. Somebody, somewhere, has already told a story that is in the same line with that specific topic. But no one has yet told your stories through your eyes. And that is what's going to make you different than everybody else. It's you giving us a fresh take on an old topic rather than regurgitating the same information, the same stories that everybody has already told. Tell us you. Give us you. Then it becomes your story because you're writing what you know. Number two. So let's say you went through something. Maybe it's a funny story, maybe it's something that was traumatic. Either way, you only have two options. You can either write about it or don't write about it. Like, that's it. Those are the only two options. If you decide that you don't want to write about it, then boom, you put it to the side and maybe come back to it later. But for the most part, the story ends there and that's that. But the moment you decide you're going to write about it, then you owe it to you and your craft to take it all the way through. You got to take us through the muck, explore every dark corner of that story just so that we can emerge on the other side. Tiptoeing around that idea is not going to do you any good. Beating around the bush is not the story you're wanting to tell, and you know that. The greatest stories we have ever heard or read are always when the writer decided to be relentless. when they told you the story as is. Imagine your favorite story. How different would it sound if the writer decided to hold back, right? How powerful would the story be if the writer decided to just kind of skirt around the subject instead of taking us through the actual story, no matter how dark it got? It won't be that powerful at all. I always say there's nothing worse than a great idea, but with poor execution. It's a waste of a good idea, and if you don't take it all the way, you are wasting a great idea by not taking us through it. Now, you might say, well, what if I write something and it offends people? Okay, well, then don't write about it. Like I said, you have two options: write about it or don't write about it. Because in those moments, there are two voices inside of you: the artist who wants to tell the story as is versus the person that actually has to walk amongst those people. So you have to decide to yourself whether telling that story is worth it. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you don't want to hurt people with your words because we have a responsibility to the people that we love. And words are sharp, words are weapons, and if you wield them wrongly, then you know you could really do some damage. However, that being said, if you go the artist route, if you're going to wield that weapon, then you got to start wielding that weapon. It's on you. Only you can decide whether or not that story is appropriate to tell. The point is, there will always be topics that you may or may not be ready to write yet, and that's okay. And sometimes you might want to write the story, but you're not going to share it with the rest of the world, and that's okay too. Point is, these are your stories. You own them. You control the narrative. But when you decide that you're going to write that story, then you need to own every part of that story, because the only way to bring that story to life on paper is to take it all the way through. And number 3, so you decided to write the poem. You decided to step out onto that high dive and you quickly realized there is no way off of it but to jump. So make it hurt. Make your decision to write it worth it by exploring every dark corner and every crevice of that story. But you know what? Let me put a pin in that because there's something that I do need to say that's very important. I know there might be some youth watching this video, and one of the problems we have had in the poetry community is we have had some coaches and some mentors make their youth write out their most traumatic stories and dig up old wounds because they think they can turn them into poems that will score really well at a poetry competition. This disgusts me, right? In essence, they're trying to exploit your pain because they think they could win with it. If you have a coach or a mentor that does this, run as far away as you can from these people. They are not here to serve in helping you heal. They're just trying to win a competition and they have an agenda that is like dark and misguided. No trauma is worth writing just so that you can win a competition or create shock value or rack up millions of hits on YouTube, right? No trauma. That's not why we write poems. That's not why we do this. We do this because we can heal. And you need to learn that as quickly as possible before someone tries to take advantage of you and your experiences. So, that being said, let me take you back about 8 years ago. My sister passed away suddenly. She was fine the week before, and then one complicated surgery later, we had no choice but to pull the plug. The day we were planning her funeral, my father looks at me and asks me if I could write a poem that I could recite at the service. I didn't know what to do because I don't usually like to write my poems when the trauma is so new, when the wounds are still fresh. I usually like to give myself some space from it and then look back on it and then write about it, because for me, that is when I can really clearly see things rather than when I'm in the muck of it. So I didn't know if I was going to do this, but I knew that there were also people that needed to hear the words that they couldn't express. They needed somebody to put into words the love they have for her and the loss that they were feeling. So I said, okay. That night, I opened up my laptop and for the next 8 hours just wrote my poem until early morning, crying every step of the way. And to this day, it's still one of the hardest poems I'd ever had to write. Mind you, I was writing that no less than 48 hours after she had passed. That was tough. I say this because when I write poems like that, I always tell myself that if I don't get emotional during the writing process, then I'm not digging deep enough. I am not taking it to the place where true healing begins. Because for me, poetry is healing. Me writing down my inner pain and putting it out on paper and then speaking it into the world, that is my way of letting it go. That is me unburdening myself of all the pain that was inside and finally letting it go and finally start healing. This is not about racking up a million views on YouTube. This is not about building a career off of. This is not about trying to get famous off poetry. This is about surviving, healing, and thriving after a trauma. So if I don't make my words hurt, then really I'm still keeping that trauma inside me. It hasn't left me. But the moment I make it hurt, the moment I take it to that place, I'm releasing everything that has held me down. And I can finally be free of it. So that's it. Those are my writing commandments. Those are the things that I live by before I write anything down. Obviously, they've evolved through the years. I used to have 10, then they became 5, and then now I have it narrowed down to these 3. And I'm pretty sure that as I continue to grow in my craft, then they're going to evolve again. Now, if this is the first time that you've ever thought about having writing commandments and you don't know which ones you would use, then feel free to use mine until yours starts to evolve into yours. Now, if you already do this, if you already have commandments that you live by, then drop them in the comments below. I would love to read what it is that you guys use when you sit down to write. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for joining me on my very first episode. I hope it was helpful. Please make sure to stay tuned for all the future videos as we try to really break down what it means to be a spoken word poet. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Make sure to follow me on all my social media platforms. I am there. I would love to hear from all of you. And until then, we will see you in the next video. And don't forget, speak like you mean it. A plane is just gonna fly by while I'm trying to do this. Can y'all hear that? Come on, let's go. What are you doing? Circling my house? Oh crap, it might be police.